I only intended to sip my tea and remain calm, but then I saw my mother-in-law standing beside my husband's alleged distant cousin. They selected a bright red coupe as if they were claiming my life itself. I pressed a button on my phone, humiliating them before dozens of onlookers. They had no idea I had already filed for divorce. The stranger who arrived later would hand me not just justice, but $100 million. My name is Harper. I sat by the window on the second floor of a coffee shop, watching the relentless Seattle drizzle coat the asphalt below. Across the street, the glass facade of North Pier Lux Motors glowed like a beacon of excess against the gray afternoon. It was the kind of place where people went to prove they were somebody, even if the bank owned everything they wore. I watched Darlene strut toward the entrance. My mother-in-law clutched a handbag that cost more than my first car. Her other arm draped possessively over Sierra. Sierra was the girl my husband, Logan, had introduced to me as his distant cousin who had just moved to the city and needed a job. Inside the showroom, the theatrics began. Darlene gestured wildly at a limited edition crimson coupe. She threw her head back, laughing with the confidence of a woman who believed the world owed her luxury. Beside her, Sierra held her phone up, circling the vehicle. She was filming content. I could practically see the hashtags forming in the air. She was unboxing her dream life while I sat here with a cold cup of tea. My phone vibrated against the wooden table. I flipped it over. The screen illuminated with a transaction alert from the bank. It was a pending charge on the supplementary platinum card I had issued to Logan. The amount was $38,900, a deposit for 5 years. I had played the role of the supportive, modest wife. I wore thrifted coats and drove a sedan that had seen better days. Logan believed I managed mid-level logistics for a construction firm. He had no idea that I was the sole owner of Renford Development Group. He had no idea that the skyline behind him was dotted with cranes that moved on my command. I had kept my empire hidden to ensure our marriage was built on love, not net worth. What a naive investment that had been. I unlocked my phone and opened the banking application. My thumb hovered over Logan's profile. I did not tremble. I did not cry. I simply tapped the option to permanently cancel the supplementary card. Then I selected the joint allowance account and froze all assets effective immediately. It took 3 seconds to dismantle his financial ego. Through the rain-streaked window, I watched the scene unravel. The sales associate walked back to Darlene and Sierra. His professional smile had vanished. He handed the black metal card back to Darlene like it was a piece of contaminated waste. Darlene's mouth opened wide. I could not hear her through the double-paned glass, but I knew the shape of her screaming. Sierra lowered her phone. The bubbly influencer facade dissolved into panic. She looked around, shifting instantly into her practiced victim stance. My phone rang. It was Darlene. I slid the answer button and brought the device to my ear. Harper, you useless. Why is Logan's card declining? We are in the middle of a purchase. Darlene shrieked. I took a sip of my Earl Grey. Darlene, I am sorry, but I received a fraud alert for $38,900. It seemed highly suspicious for a distant cousin to be buying a luxury vehicle on a Tuesday. Fix it. Fix it now I cannot, I said, my voice smooth and devoid of warmth. I flagged it as theft. The bank said, they might send security to verify the identity of the people attempting the transaction. You might want to leave before the police arrive. I hung up before she could respond. Across the street, Darlene grabbed Sierra's arm. They looked frantic, their eyes darting toward the showroom doors as if the SWAT team were already descending from the ceiling. They scrambled toward the exit, abandoning the red coupe and their dignity. I finished my tea and placed the cup back on the saucer with a soft clink. Okay, I whispered to the empty chair across from me. No more playing nice. Darlene tried to pivot toward the exit, dragging Sierra with her, but the uniformed security guard was faster. He stepped into their path with the immobility of a concrete pillar, extending a hand to gesture them toward the glass-walled waiting area. From my vantage point across the street, I saw Darlene's mouth moving rapidly. She was likely demanding to speak to a manager, unaware that she was about to speak to the owner. Mr. Caldwell emerged from the back office. I knew Caldwell well. We had served on the same charity board for 3 years. He was a man of impeccable manners and zero tolerance for nonsense. He adjusted his cuffs, listened briefly to the security guard, and then approached the 2 women. His body language was polite but frigid. My phone rang again. The caller ID displayed Caldwell, North Pier. I answered immediately. Ms. Renford. Caldwell's voice came through clear and sharp. I could hear the background noise of the showroom, which meant he had put me on speakerphone. I apologize for the disturbance. We have a situation regarding the pickup of the vehicle. I watched Darlene lunge toward Caldwell's phone. Her shrill voice pierced through the speaker. Tell this man who my son is Logan is a director at your husband's company. This is just a technical glitch with the bank. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my voice steady and professional. Mr. Caldwell, is there a problem with the delivery? My finance department confirmed the wire transfer of $120,000 yesterday. That car is a performance bonus for our Employee of the Year. It needs to be delivered to the recipient's home by 5 o'clock this evening. There was a pause on the line. In the showroom, silence descended like a heavy curtain. The vehicle is fully paid for. Ms. Renford, Caldwell said, his voice amplified for everyone in the lobby to hear. However, I have 2 individuals here claiming the car belongs to them. A Mrs. Miller and a younger woman. They attempted to pay a deposit with a declined supplementary card under the name Logan Miller. Logan. I let out a short, confused laugh, perfectly rehearsed. There must be a misunderstanding. Logan Miller is a contract administrative assistant at my firm. He certainly does not have the salary to purchase a limited edition coupe, nor does he have authorization to claim company assets. Is he there? No, Caldwell replied, his tone turning clinically dismissive as he looked at Darlene. Just his mother and a companion. And, frankly, considering Mr. Miller's employment status as a temp, I am confused as to why he has been driving a company-leased SUV for the past year. We might need to audit those keys. I saw Sierra freeze. The color drained from her face so fast she looked like a wax figure. She dropped her hand, the phone she had been using to film her triumphant moment now hanging limp by her side. She looked at Darlene, and then she looked at the expensive car she had just been posing with. The realization hit her hard. She thought she had hooked a whale, but she had only caught a minnow wearing a gold-plated hat. Darlene, however, was not ready to accept defeat. She began to wave her arms, screaming at the phone. You liar. You are just jealous. She is doing this because she knows Logan loves Sierra more. She is trying to humiliate us. Ms. Renford. Caldwell interrupted Darlene's tirade, his voice dripping with disdain. I am going to have security escort these individuals out. We will deliver the car to your staff member as planned. Thank you. Mr. Caldwell, please apologize to your other clients for the noise. I hung up. Across the street, the scene had devolved into chaos. Shoppers who had been ignoring them were now holding up their phones, recording the meltdown. Darlene was shouting at a security guard, while Sierra tried to hide her face with her purse, desperate to escape the lens of the very social media audience she craved. I did not stay to watch them get thrown out. The satisfaction was sweet, but it was merely an appetizer. I placed a $20 bill on the table for the tea and stood up, smoothing my coat. Step 2, I murmured to myself as I walked toward the stairs. Let's finish this at the office. I sat in my executive suite on the top floor, my eyes fixed on the high-definition monitor feeding live footage from the open-plan office 3 floors down. The audio was crystal clear. Logan was standing by his desk, berating a trembling intern. This is hazelnut! You idiot! Logan spat, pushing the cup so hard it splashed onto the girl's blouse. I asked for vanilla. Do you have a brain injury, or are you just incompetent? He adjusted his tie, preening like a peacock, unaware that the hunters had already entered the enclosure. The glass doors swung open. Ms. Parker walked in first. She was my most trusted assistant, a woman who could dismantle a grown man's ego with a single raised eyebrow. Flanking her were the head of human resources and 2 large security officers. The office went silent. Logan looked up, annoyed but not afraid. He still thought he owned the place. The HR director stepped forward and placed a heavy red envelope on Logan's desk. It hit the surface with a dull thud. "Mr. Miller," the director said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "This is your notice of immediate termination for gross misconduct." Logan laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "You are joking." "Right. You dare to fire the husband of the CEO. I will have your job for this by lunch." "Ms." Parker stepped closer. She did not blink. The CEO signed the order herself. 7 minutes ago. Logan's smirk faltered. He looked at the envelope, then back at Parker. "Harper. She wouldn't. She listens to me. She listened to the forensic accountants." Parker replied. She signaled to the HR director, who spread a series of documents across the desk. Fake invoices totaling thousands of dollars, reimbursements for client entertainment that were actually booked as a romantic getaway to Cabo with a Miss Sierra Vance, and the unauthorized internal loan you approved for yourself using a forged signature. Logan stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the cubicle wall. That is a lie I can explain." "You can explain it to the legal team," Parker said. "Security, please collect his assets." One of the guards stepped forward. "Laptop, badge, car keys. Now!" "You are not taking my car," Logan shouted, his face turning a blotchy red. "I am the director." "You are a junior administrative assistant," the guard corrected him, reaching out and snatching the keys from Logan's belt loop. Logan lunged for the keys, a desperate, flailing motion. He tripped over his own feet and stumbled hard against the desk. He looked around, expecting sympathy. He found none. The office was filled with the people he had bullied for years. They watched with stone faces. "You have 5 minutes to collect your personal effects," the HR director stated, dropping a flattened cardboard box at Logan's feet. "Anything left behind will be incinerated." I watched on the screen as my husband scrambled to unfold the box. He threw in a framed photo of himself, a stapler, and a gym bag. As he was escorted toward the elevators, clutching his box like a life raft, the silence in the room broke. Someone let out a short, stifled laugh. It was the intern he had just yelled at, in the hallway. Logan fumbled for his phone. I saw him dialing frantically. My phone on the desk remained silent. I had blocked him 10 minutes ago. He dialed again. Darlene. She was likely still screaming at the car dealership, tying up her line. He dialed a 3rd time. Sierra! He pulled the phone away from his ear, staring at the screen in disbelief. She had turned her phone off. Just as the elevator doors began to open, his phone chimed with a text message. He looked down. I could not see the screen from my camera feed, but I knew what it said because I knew who sent it. "You think only one person is playing chess. Look closer." Attached to the message was a high-resolution photograph of Logan embracing Sierra in a parking garage 3 weeks ago. The angle was high and sharp. It was taken by a professional surveillance drone. Logan looked up at the security camera in the ceiling, his eyes wide with a new kind of terror. He finally realized he was not the player. He was the pawn. The meeting with my divorce attorney was the shortest in his career. He had a box of tissues ready on the mahogany conference table, expecting a weeping, heartbroken wife. Instead, I slid a black binder across the polished surface. "I do not need your sympathy," I said, opening the binder to the first tab. I need a shark. Here is the checklist. Tab 1 details my premarital assets, which are ironclad. Tab 2 contains the evidence of financial infidelity and fraud committed by Logan. Tab 3 is the draft for an immediate restraining order. My lawyer blinked, adjusting his glasses. He looked at the documents, then at me. Harper, usually we take a moment to process the emotional impact. I processed it when I canceled his credit card. I replied. File the papers by noon. I returned to the office, where the air was thick with tension. My head of internal audit was waiting for me. He looked uncomfortable. We went into the secure conference room, and he projected a spreadsheet onto the wall. We found a leak, he said quietly. It is small. Harper, $500 here, $1,000 there. It flows through 3 vendors. Blue Sky Logistics, Peak Supplies, and something called Zenith Consulting. I do not recognize those names. I said, neither did the state registry. He answered, they are shell companies, and they all share the same mailing address. It is a post office box in Nevada. I nodded. Logan had been siphoning money. It was clumsy, amateurish theft, but theft nonetheless. I picked up my phone and dialed the number for Rainline Investigations. I had hired them the moment I left the car dealership. I did not care about Logan's whereabouts. I cared about the woman standing next to him. Tell me you have something, I said into the receiver. The investigator's voice was gravelly. We have everything, and you are going to want to sit down. The girl, Sierra. She is not his cousin. I assumed as much. No, Harper. Listen, she is not even Sierra Vance. She has 2 aliases. She has a history of changing her name to dodge lawsuits for rental fraud in Oregon and California. She is a professional parasite. I stared at the city skyline. Is that all? No, the investigator continued. This is the big one. She is married, legally. She has a husband in San Francisco who thinks she is in Seattle caring for a sick aunt. He has no idea she is living a double life. I felt a cold smile touch my lips. This was leverage. While I digested this information, my public relations manager burst into the room. She looked frantic. Do not look at social media, she warned. Naturally, I looked. Darlene and Logan were on a rampage. They had posted long, tearful statuses on 3 different platforms. They claimed I was controlling, that I used my money to abuse Logan mentally, and that I had cut him off without a penny because I was paranoid and jealous. The narrative was crafted to make me look like a monster and Logan like a martyr. Do we issue a statement? My manager asked. No, I said calmly. Do not engage. Screenshot every post. Archive every comment where they slander my name. Print every threatening message Darlene sends. We are building a defamation case. Let them dig their own graves. My phone buzzed again. It was Rainline Investigations with a follow-up file. Check your email, the investigator said. We traced the credit card Sierra used to pay for her flight here. It was reported lost 3 months ago by her husband, and we found a link to a gift account she has been draining. I opened the attachment. The name on the account made me pause. Her husband. I whispered. Miles Rowan. I knew that name. Everyone in the business world knew that name. Miles Rowan was a ghost investor, a hedge fund manager who moved markets with a whisper. He was incredibly wealthy, notoriously private, and dangerously intelligent. Where is he now? I asked. That is the interesting part. The investigator replied. His private jet filed a flight plan 2 hours ago. Destination Seattle. He knows something is wrong. I hung up the phone. The game had just changed. I was not just fighting a cheating husband and a grifter mistress anymore. I was about to share the battlefield with a titan. The chandelier light fractured against the crystal glass in my hand. I sat at the center of the VIP table, perfectly composed in a midnight blue gown that cost more than Logan's annual salary. The Miller Family Charity Gala was the social event of the season for his relatives, a place where old money patted itself on the back. I watched the entrance. Darlene walked in first, her chin held high, dragging a sullen Logan behind her. He looked diminished without his corporate armor. Sierra trailed them, wearing a dress that was a bit too short for a conservative fundraiser, clearly trying to play the supportive partner. They were here to beg. I knew Darlene's plan. She wanted to corner Logan's wealthy uncle, plead poverty, and secure a loan by claiming I had kicked them out onto the street. They were banking on my absence, or at least my silence. They froze when they saw me. Logan stopped so abruptly that Sierra bumped into his back. He stared at the head table, his eyes widening. I was not sitting with the spouses. I was sitting in the chair reserved for the guest of honor. Logan marched over, his face flushed. "What are you doing here?" "Harper, this is a family event. You have no right to be here after what you did." Before I could answer, Uncle Arthur, the patriarch of the Miller family and a man who had never particularly liked Logan, stood up next to me. He placed a warm hand on my shoulder. "Harper is not just family." "Logan," Arthur boomed, his voice carrying to the nearby tables. "She is the platinum benefactor of this evening. She covered the entire catering bill and donated $50,000 to the scholarship fund this morning." Logan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He looked like a fish gasping on a dock. I stood up, tapping a spoon against my glass. The room fell silent. 200 faces turned toward me. "Thank you, Arthur," I said, smiling warmly. "I believe in transparency. When we give, we should know exactly where our support goes." And in the spirit of honesty, I asked my team to prepare a brief transparency report regarding the family's recent challenges. I nodded to my assistant, who was standing by the projector. The screen behind me illuminated. The first 2 slides were standard charts showing donation allocations. The room nodded in approval. Then, the slide changed. A collective gasp swept through the hall. Projected on the 10-foot screen was a high-resolution photograph of Logan and Sierra. They were sunbathing on a private yacht, cocktails in hand, looking very intimate. "This photo was taken on October 14th, I said, my voice calm and deadly. "The location is the Sapphire Coast. The bill for this trip was charged to the client retention fund of my company." I paused, letting the silence stretch until it was painful. "October 14th, I repeated softly. That was the day my father went into cardiac arrest. While I was sitting in the ICU praying for him to wake up, my husband was busy retaining this client." Darlene slammed her hand on the table, knocking over a vase. "Lies. This is a fabrication. You photoshopped this to ruin him." My assistant clicked the next slide. It displayed the metadata of the photo, the flight logs, and the credit card receipts, all notarized by Rainline Investigations. It was irrefutable. "It is not a fabrication." "Darlene," I said, "it is a receipt." The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The curiosity vanished, replaced by cold, hard judgment. The wealthy relatives who Darlene hoped would save them were now looking at Logan with absolute disgust. To them, infidelity was a private matter, but embezzlement and abandoning a dying father-in-law, that was unforgivable. Sierra sensed the shift. She realized this was not a stage for her debut. It was an execution. She started to back away, her heels clicking nervously on the parquet floor as she aimed for the double doors at the back of the hall. I need some air," she stammered, turning to flee. She didn't make it. Just as she reached the exit, the doors swung open. A man stepped through. He was tall, wearing a charcoal wool coat that looked heavy with rain. He did not look at the crowd. He did not look at Logan. His eyes locked onto Sierra with a terrifying intensity. It was the look of a predator who had finally cornered its prey. Sierra stopped dead. Her breath hitched, audible even from across the room. The man stood silently in the doorway, blocking her path. Miles Rowan had arrived in Seattle. The temporary restraining order arrived on my desk with the morning coffee. Logan was not going down quietly. He had filed a petition claiming that I was stalking him, using electronic surveillance to harass him and threatening his physical safety. It was a desperate, tactical move designed to force me into a settlement just to make the headache go away. Simultaneously, Darlene was busy lighting fires in my social circle. My phone blew up with messages from acquaintances asking if the rumors were true. Darlene was telling anyone who would listen that I had been funneling charity money into my personal offshore accounts. It was a projection of her own greed, but it was damaging. Then came the internal attack. The board of directors forwarded me an anonymous email, clearly written by Sierra. It claimed that the CEO was mentally unstable due to marital jealousy and was making irrational business decisions to punish her husband. I did not flinch. I did not scream. I called my lead counsel and the head of public relations into my office. Issue a press release. I commanded. We are initiating a voluntary, public, independent audit of all charitable funds and company expenses for the last 5 years. Open the books. Let the world see every penny. By calling for transparency. I turned their smear campaign into a marketing victory. While they whispered in the shadows, I turned on the floodlights. The legal noose tightened an hour later. My lawyers secured a court order requiring Logan to surrender all personal electronic devices that contained company data. Through the IT monitoring software, we watched the panic set in. Logan was at his mother's house, frantically deleting files. He wiped emails, reformatted drives, and cleared chat logs. He had no idea what a legal hold was. He is digging a deeper hole. My chief technology officer noted as we watched the server logs. Our backup system archives every deletion in real time. He is not destroying evidence. He is creating a new felony charge for destruction of data. Outside my home, the circus arrived. Darlene had tipped off a local tabloid crew. I watched from the security monitors as she stood at my front gate, sobbing into a camera, painting a picture of a wealthy, heartless daughter-in-law who had thrown a family out into the cold. She wanted a reaction. She wanted me to storm out and look angry. Instead, I sent the head of my private security detail down the driveway. He did not speak to the cameras. He simply handed Darlene a formal notice of trespass and informed the reporters that filming on private property would result in immediate litigation. The show ended before the commercial break, but the real cracks were forming inside the enemy camp. Rainline Investigations sent me an audio recording captured from a listening device in the rental car Logan was using. I need $50,000. Logan, Sierra's voice hissed through the speaker. I need to leave town. I don't have it. Logan sounded terrified. Harper froze everything. I have nothing. Then find it, Sierra snapped. Or maybe I should call Harper's lawyer and tell them about the loan documents, the ones where you signed her name. That is forgery, Logan. That is prison time. Do you want to go to jail, or do you want to find me my money? Logan was silent. He was beginning to realize that the woman he sacrificed his marriage for was not his soulmate. She was his executioner. My lawyer walked into my office, interrupting my thoughts. He looked pale. We received a communication, he said, handing me a single sheet of paper. It is from the legal team representing Miles Rowan. I took the paper. It was not a threat. It was an invitation. I have evidence that Sierra is defrauding both you and me. She is playing us against each other. But I want to meet you before I destroy everything. There is something you need to know about the past. I looked at the signature at the bottom. The handwriting was sharp and aggressive. Miles Rowan was ready to enter the game, and I had a feeling the board was about to be flipped over entirely. The meeting took place in a private conference suite at the Four Seasons. I brought my lead counsel, a man who charged $800 an hour to be my shield. I expected Miles Rowan to arrive with a phalanx of bodyguards and a team of aggressive litigators. Instead, he was alone. He sat at the head of the table, his hands clasped over a leather folio. He wore a suit that whispered quiet power, tailored to perfection. He did not stand up when we entered. He simply gestured to the chairs opposite him with a nod. The air in the room felt heavy, charged with the static of two storms colliding. "Thank you for coming," Miles said. His voice was deep, steady, and terrifyingly calm. "I believe we have a mutual pest problem." I sat down, keeping my posture rigid. "My investigator says you are the husband. I want to hear it from you." "Sierra is my wife," Miles admitted, his eyes darkening. "It was an arrangement between our families, old debts, old alliances. I thought she had grown out of her rebellious phase. I thought she was in Seattle caring for her dying aunt. Instead, she was here." He slid a document across the polished wood. It was a credit report. "She has been busy," Miles continued. She opened 3 lines of credit in Logan's name. "She used his social security number to lease an apartment in Belltown. She is using your husband as a shell company, Harper. He thinks he is spoiling a mistress, but she is actually building a golden parachute to leave him the moment the money runs out." I looked at the papers. The dates aligned perfectly with the withdrawals from my accounts. "Logan is a fool," I said cold, "but he is not a victim. He stole from my company." "He did." Miles agreed. "But look at this." He opened a second file. It contained digital copies of the fake vendor invoices my internal audit had flagged. He pointed to the electronic signature at the bottom. "That is Logan's authorization key," Miles explained. "But look at the metadata of the document template. It was created on a laptop registered to Sierra Vance, or rather, Sierra Rowan. She drafted the fake invoices. She set up the shell companies. She just handed Logan the tablet and told him where to sign. He is the signatory, but she is the architect." I felt a chill run down my spine. Logan was not just an adulterer. He was a patsy in a much larger con. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, narrowing my eyes. "If this goes to court, your wife goes to prison. That drags your name into the mud." "I do not care about the mud," Miles said, leaning forward. "I care about the infection. I want to cut it out. I do not want a violent revenge. I want a legal evisceration. I want her to have nothing, no alimony, no settlement, no way to hurt anyone else." "So you want me to do your dirty work?" "No," Miles replied softly. "I want you to win, because you are the one who was betrayed in your own home. You are the one she laughed at." He paused, gauging my reaction. "I will testify," he promised. "I will provide the original forensic data from my own investigators. I will hand you the hammer to crush them both. All I ask is that one specific detail regarding my family's trust fund remains sealed. It has no bearing on your case, but it matters to my grandfather." I looked at my lawyer. He gave a microscopic nod. "It was a fair trade." "I can agree to that," I said. Miles did not smile. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the table between us. "Then there is one last thing." I opened the envelope. It was a letter of intent from the Rowan Family Trust. My eyes scanned the numbers, and my breath caught in my throat. $100 million, I read aloud, my voice trembling slightly for the first time. "It is not a bribe," Miles said. "It is an endowment. I want to fund a new charitable foundation under your name. A legal defense fund for victims of financial fraud in marriage. And I want to cover your legal fees for this divorce, so you do not have to spend a single penny of your own hard-earned money fighting these parasites. There is a condition," I noted, looking at the bottom of the page. "Yes," Miles said, standing up and buttoning his coat. "You have to let the world know exactly what they did. No settlements, no quiet non-disclosure agreements. You take this to trial. Harper, you burn them down in the light of day. Do we have a deal?" I looked at the document, then up at him. "Sit down." "Mr. Rowan," I said, picking up my pen. "We have a lot of work to do." The agreement with Miles Rowan was signed in silence. I committed to establishing the Renford Rowan Initiative, a foundation dedicated to funding forensic audits for women navigating financially abusive divorces. In exchange, Miles signed a binding affidavit promising to appear in court and providing a data drive containing terabytes of original transaction logs. It was a fair trade. I gave him a platform. He gave me the ammunition to nuke my enemies from orbit. My legal team wasted no time. We filed a supplementary motion the next morning, escalating the case from a simple divorce to a complex civil fraud suit combined with a breach of fiduciary duty. We also filed an emergency motion to bifurcate the assets, effectively locking my personal wealth in a vault that Logan could not touch. Then came the bait. I instructed my lawyer to send a preliminary settlement offer to Logan. It was designed to look like a capitulation. We offered him a lump sum of $200,000 to walk away quietly, provided he signed a document acknowledging minor administrative errors during his employment. It was a classic legal bear trap. If he signed, he was admitting to the fraud in writing. If he refused, he got nothing. I knew my husband. He was greedy. And right now, he was desperate. From the surveillance reports, I knew exactly what happened in his mother's living room. Darlene saw the number and practically screamed. "Sign it, Logan. $200,000 is enough to start over. We can buy a condo. She is weak. She is paying you to leave." Sierra was even more aggressive. She needed cash to flee before her own husband tracked her down. She whispered poison in his ear. "Just sign it, baby." We take the money and go to Mexico. Who cares about administrative errors? It's just corporate speak, caught between his mother's screeching and his mistress's seduction. Logan cracked. He signed the document, believing he had won a lottery ticket. He had actually just signed his own confession. Simultaneously, the internal investigation at my company reached its peak. Logan had been ordered to surrender his work devices. He handed over a laptop and a tablet that looked pristine. He had spent hours running a military-grade deletion program he found online. Convinced he was smarter than my IT department. He was wrong. My chief information officer walked into my office with a grim smile. He wiped the local drives, he explained, but he forgot that every keystroke was mirrored to our cloud server for compliance purposes. We have the logs. We can see him searching for how to fake an invoice in non-extradition countries on company time. The stage was set for the deposition. We met in a neutral conference room downtown. Sierra was there, ostensibly as a witness for Logan. She looked dangerously confident, wearing a white suit that screamed innocence. She sat with her chin up, treating the court reporter like a fan. "Ms. Vance," my lawyer began, "can you explain your relationship with Mr. Miller?" "He is my cousin." Sierra lied, her voice smooth. "A distant relation? I was simply helping him navigate a toxic work environment created by his jealous wife." I sat in the corner, saying nothing. I let her talk. And she did talk. She spun a web of lies so complex that she began to trip over her own threads. She claimed she had never been to the Sapphire Coast, contradicting the flight logs we had. She claimed she had no income, contradicting the credit card statements Miles had provided. She was digging her own grave with a silver shovel. During the mid-afternoon recess, the room cleared out. Logan went to the restroom to wash the sweat off his face. Sierra stayed behind, checking her makeup in her compact mirror. Her phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and answered. "Hello, who is this?" I watched from the doorway as the color drained from her face. It started at her neck and washed up to her hairline, leaving her looking like a ghost. What she whispered, her hand trembling. "No, that's not possible. Miles doesn't know." The voice on the other end was not Logan. It was the lead counsel for Miles Rowan. "We have filed for an annulment based on fraud." "Ms. Vance," the lawyer said, loud enough for me to hear the tinny distortion from where I stood. "And we have just forwarded a criminal complaint to the district attorney for identity theft and grand larceny. The police are on their way to the building." Sierra dropped the phone. It hit the carpet with a dull thud. much like the sound of her future collapsing. Logan tried to corner me in the hallway outside my lawyer's office 3 days before the final hearing. He looked disheveled, wearing a suit that had not been pressed in days. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a pathetic, calculated remorse. He reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "Harper, please," Logan pleaded, his voice cracking. "I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but 5 years meant something, didn't they? I miss you. I miss us. I want to come home." I looked at him, not with anger, but with the clinical detachment of a surgeon looking at a tumor. "Do you miss me, Logan?" I asked softly. "Or do you miss the credit limit? Tell me, do you even remember the PIN code to the platinum card, or does Sierra remember it?" He flinched as if I had slapped him. He opened his mouth to stammer an excuse, but I walked past him before he could speak. Darlene was next. She did not plead, she preached. She intercepted me in the parking lot, clutching rosary beads in one hand and a handkerchief in the other. "You have to forgive him. Harper," she wailed, tears streaming down her face. "The Bible says we must forgive sinners. Be a good person. Do not destroy a family over one mistake." I unlocked my car door and looked her in the eye. "Darlene, a good person is not a person who gets exploited. I am done being your martyr." While they tried to manipulate me, Sierra was trying to vanish. My private investigator informed me that she had attempted to book a one-way flight to Rio de Janeiro. She made it as far as the confirmation screen before the system flagged her. The civil court order I had filed regarding the embezzlement investigation had frozen her assets and placed a hold on her passport. She was trapped in the very city she had tried to conquer. To make matters worse for them, the independent audit of my company was released to the public. The report confirmed that my books were impeccable and that the only financial irregularities were the fraudulent invoices linked to Logan. The narrative flipped overnight. The social media comments that had once called me a tyrant now hailed me as a transparent leader standing up to corruption. They lost their only weapon. The pressure cooker finally exploded inside their camp. Logan, paranoid and broke, went through Sierra's phone while she was sleeping. He found messages from a wealthy real estate developer in Miami. Sierra was already setting up her next target. Logan went berserk. Neighbors reported shouting matches that shook the walls, but Sierra was smarter. When Logan started screaming threats, she hit record on her phone. She captured every violent, unhinged word he said, creating yet another piece of evidence to ensure she could play the victim when the ship went down. The night before the trial, I sat alone in my living room. A glass of wine sat untouched on the table. I held my wedding album in my lap. I flipped through the pages, looking at the smiles that seemed so genuine at the time. I did not cry. I did not feel a breaking heart. I felt like I was closing a file on a failed project. I picked up a pen and wrote 2 words on the final page of the divorce petition: irreconcilable betrayal. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was a message from Miles. "I will appear tomorrow morning, but you must prepare yourself. You are going to hear a sentence that will make the entire courtroom freeze." I slept soundly for the first time in weeks. The next morning, I walked into the courthouse flanked by my legal team. I wore a white suit, sharp and immaculate. I did not look like a woman going through a divorce. I looked like I was walking into a shareholder meeting to announce a hostile takeover. We took our seats. The judge called the session to order. I expected the usual opening statements, the boring procedural droning. Suddenly, the opposing counsel stood up. Logan's lawyer, a man who looked like he hadn't slept in a week, slammed a thick stack of documents onto the defense table. "Your Honor," he shouted, his voice echoing off the wood paneling. "We move to dismiss all claims. We have just received new evidence proving that the plaintiff, Harper Renford, has been hiding substantial assets in offshore accounts to defraud my client of his marital share." A murmur rippled through the gallery. The judge frowned. My lawyer stiffened beside me. I looked at Logan. He was grinning. It was the desperate, manic grin of a man who thought he had just pulled the pin on a grenade, unaware that he was holding it backward. The judge peered over his spectacles, his gaze heavy with suspicion. "Ms. Renford," he said, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom. "These documents suggest you have hidden $3 million in the Cayman Islands. How do you respond?" I looked across the aisle. Logan sat up straight, clutching the table as if it were a life raft. Darlene was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, but behind the cloth, her mouth twisted into a triumphant smirk. Sierra stared right at me, her eyes gleaming with a predatory challenge. They thought they had cornered me. They thought the game was over. My lawyer stood up, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, the defense rejects these documents as total fabrications. To prove their origin, we request permission to call a witness who has just arrived, Mr. Miles Rowan." A murmur swept through the gallery. The heavy oak doors at the back of the room swung open. Miles Rowan walked in. He moved with a calm, terrifying grace. Ignoring the sea of faces turning to look at him, he took the stand, swore the oath, and sat down. "Mr. Rowan," my lawyer began, "please state your relationship to the parties involved." Miles looked past Logan. He locked eyes with Sierra. "My name is Miles Rowan," he said, his voice deep and clear. "And that woman, who is currently identifying herself as Sierra Vance, is my legal wife. And she has used Mr. Miller as a blunt instrument to commit financial fraud against my estate and Ms. Renford's company. This includes the creation of the fake offshore asset dossier you are holding right now." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a building collapses. Miles reached into his briefcase and produced a hard drive. "I am submitting the original metadata logs. These show that the hidden asset documents were created on a laptop registered to Sierra Rowan using Mr. Miller's stolen administrative credentials." The judge turned slowly to look at the defense table. His expression had shifted from suspicion to fury. "Mr. Miller, it appears you are not a victim of a controlling wife. You are an accomplice to grand larceny." Logan turned white. He looked at the judge, then at me, and finally at Sierra. The reality crashed down on him. "She made me do it," Logan screamed, jumping to his feet and pointing a trembling finger at Sierra. "She said it was the only way. She said Harper was hiding money. She told me to sign the papers I did not know." "Sit down, Mr. Miller," the bailiff shouted. Sierra stood up, her composure shattering. "He is lying. He is just trying to save his own skin." "I do not know this man." My lawyer calmly pressed a button on his laptop, playing a verified audio recording through the courtroom speakers. It was Sierra's voice, unmistakable and shrill. "Just sign the settlement. Logan, we take the cash and leave. Who cares if it is illegal? We will be in Brazil before they figure it out." Sierra slumped back into her chair. Her hands began to shake uncontrollably. She looked at the exit, but 2 marshals had already moved to block the doors. Miles placed one final envelope on the judge's bench. "Your Honor," Miles said, "to ensure that justice is not delayed by financial negotiations, I am submitting a letter of intent. I have established a trust fund of $100 million in Ms. Renford's name. This is to cover all legal costs and to establish a foundation for victims of fraud. She does not need to negotiate for pennies with the people who stole her life." The judge nodded. He struck his gavel, the sound like a gunshot. The court rules in favor of the plaintiff. The divorce is granted immediately. Mr. Miller is awarded 0 assets and is ordered to pay full restitution for company funds. Furthermore, I am referring both Mr. Miller and Mrs. Rowan to the district attorney for immediate criminal investigation regarding fraud and identity theft. I stood up. It was done. As the marshals moved in to handcuff Logan and Sierra, Darlene rushed toward the aisle. She grabbed the sleeve of my jacket, her face wet with tears. "Harper, please," she begged, her voice high and desperate. "We are family. You cannot let them take him. Be a Christian. Be a good person." I gently removed her hand from my sleeve. I leaned in close, so only she could hear. "You did not lose a daughter-in-law today. Darlene," I said softly, "you lost the right to use a daughter-in-law." I turned and walked out of the courtroom. The heavy doors closed behind me, shutting out Darlene's wails and Logan's shouting. Outside, the rain had stopped. The press was waiting at the bottom of the steps. I paused at the top landing. My lawyer handed me the incorporation papers for the new foundation. I signed them right there, using the back of my briefcase as a desk. I looked up at the wall of cameras. I did not win because I am rich. I said to the reporters, my voice steady, I won because I was awake. I capped my pen, walked down the steps, and stepped into the waiting car. I was finally free. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts on the ending. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like the video, and smash that hype button so more people can hear this story. See you in the next one.